granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Okay, so yesterday I made a video about the plight of Afghan women that was using as my basis a video that had been put out by a woman who says she is Afghan and in Afghanistan. I got some very thoughtful comments under that video. One of them was that we don't know that she is an Afghan woman or that she is in Afghanistan. And indeed, I don't understand how a woman in Afghanistan could manage to put out something like that, although it's not entirely impossible, because although there are clampdowns in that benighted country, clampdowns on all sorts of information, it's very chaotically run as well. So it's quite possible that someone in the city has access to the internet and can speak English and, you know, that sort of thing. However, even if that woman is, as he made the comment, you know, a Pakistani woman in Dusseldorf, it doesn't matter, because there is nothing about what she said that is untrue. This is the situation of Afghani women. They possibly even, well, it is worse. At the end of my last video, in the final seconds, I put a link, and unfortunately that was only possible on YouTube. I put a link to a video I made about a 9-year-old girl being ripped from the arms of her barely beyond teenage mother to be given in marriage, if you can call it that, to some old man, screaming as she's being pulled away from her grieving mother. You know, this sort of thing happens in Afghanistan all the time. It's a terrible situation. I have not forgotten it, and every so often I return to the dreadful position that women are in Afghanistan. Another one of the comments under the video was that, and I might say this is all, I got a couple of nasty comments, generally of the semi-literate variety, from people who just looked in on the channel, and well, if you can call them people, they might be bots or they might be just brain dead Pakistanis. I'm sorry, but there are a lot of those on the internet. But whatever, I've had a couple of really silly, stupid and nasty comments. One or two of which I have actually deleted, because they make personal comments about me that I don't approve of. And since this is my channel, I don't see why I should sit there and see myself insulted. So just be aware of that. Right. But my subscribers are generally a self-selected, very thoughtful lot. And one of them went as follows. Hang on, I've got to look. If women denied treatment by male doctors, which is the case in Afghanistan, die prematurely, their childbearing potential is therefore curtailed. Yep. Are the remaining women then expected to make up the reproductive shortfall? Is this yet another reason for polygamous marriages in the region? Well, yes and no. The fact is, it's to do with Islam. For sure, women are going to lose their reproductive potential in this situation. Although some women are going to be forced to have one baby after another after the other. Other women are going to get various sorts of diseases or injuries that will stop them from conceiving or even living, so they won't be putting much ahead into the future genetic pool. But you have to realise this is a basic problem with Islam. David Wood keeps talking about the Islamic dilemma, during which the Islamic dilemma has the Quran contradicting itself to the extent that it's in some sort of, it goes into a loop. I'm not going to go into that now. You can probably find it yourself online. But the other problem with Islam is the the social structure. You see, it acts a lot like a Ponzi scheme, especially when it comes to women. Men are allowed 4 wives and unlimited concubines. So that is going to take the pool of women out of circulation. When a man has 4 wives, there may be just a few women more than men in any generation, but not as many as times 4. So you're going to reduce the availability of marriageable women, and I'm not talking now about concubines who are, as Muhammad said, what your right hand possesses, meaning what you got with a sword you can keep. So I'm just talking about marriageable Muslim women for the moment. There's not going to be that many of them left. So the only choice that's left to the next generation down is to go raiding other settlements. And this is the history of Islam. Killing the men of non-Muslim societies and then taking the women, as we refer to it as sex slaves. No, taking the women, just taking the women, because there aren't any women in their generation available. They've all been sponged up by the previous generation. And the only way to get this constant supply is by raiding other societies. It's happening, by the way, right now in Nigeria. Boko Haram, the Islamist terror group, and the Fulani tribe, who aren't officially a terror group but are Muslim and not particularly under the control of the Nigerian government. They're constantly raiding, and Christian schools, you notice, when they do raids, they raid Christian schools because these girls can be taken and they're, fertile. They're in in their teens. So that's what's happening, because that's part of the structure of Islam and part of the reason why it spread so quickly. Because the men were forced out in order to get reproductive rights. And that's a great driver of men all the time, always has been. We have to remember that human beings are also animals and generally want to reproduce. Let's leave what's happening in the West to one side for the time being. So that's also, by the way, what's driving all these young Muslim men into Europe and the USA. There is a shortage of women in their own societies. Now, some of them may say they're married. They might have 1 wife, but what they want is 3 or 4, because that's what they're allowed. And when you get a society, a Muslim society, where it's impossible to go out and raid other villages because they've all been turned into Muslim areas, like the Levant, for instance, Syria, Iraq, that area, then what happens is social disruption, civil war. That's what ISIS was all about. They like to say it's about the purity of Islam, but basically it was about the ability to kidnap Yazidis and make them into sex machines for them, because that's what these young men wanted. They couldn't get them from their countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. So they just had to go raiding, and they killed Muslims as well to get rights over these now spare women. Now, that is the problem with Islam. It can never construct a stable society under the rules it has now. The rules can, of course, be changed. What has to happen is that they have to get rid of the idea that Muhammad is the perfect man and has to be emulated. And once that idea is gone, that was the big mistake that Islam made in the in the 11th century, when they were starting more to codify exactly what Islam was, the 11th, the 12th century. It took a while. But yeah, that's another thing on the that goes to the side for the moment. So then I got another comment from another very thoughtful subscriber. And he said, well, what can we do? What can we do about this? This woman here is in prison. You can see there she is in prison, looking at you through the bars of her prison. And every woman in Afghanistan in prison, just like that, somebody else said, inside a sensory deprivation tent, which is enough to drive anyone mad. And of course, just to go off on another tangent, which I've also made, this is going to drive a lot of women mad. And they may reproduce, but they are going to produce very damaged children because they themselves are psychologically or psychiatrically ill. So the whole society is going to descend into the most awful, well, it's already in a bit of a pit, but it's going to be worse. However, we don't have time to let them just run themselves out and then be conquered by some other stronger, more robust society. We don't have time because they have access to weapons, mostly American weapons. Thank you, Joe Biden. Okay, so we don't have time for that. I mean, the governments are acting as if we do, but frankly, I think that they are... well, they're just kicking the can down the road, aren't they? Anyway, so this subscriber said, what can we do about this? And the general impression that I got from the rest of his comment to me was that there's nothing we can do. We've just got to watch this tragedy unfold. Well, actually, there is something we can do, and I'm going to go to Ayn Rand to illustrate this. Now, I haven't found this. I read it once, and unfortunately, I didn't write down where it was. So I can't quote chapter and verse. And if anyone can let me know about this quote, where it turns up, I really do want to know where it comes from. But I know it was quoted as by Ayn Rand, sorry. And she said something to the effect that when two parties are having an argument that is not moderated externally, then the one sticking to the rules is going to be the one that loses. And what happened? The Russians, the Brits, the Americans, they all made the same mistake. They stuck to the rules. The rules of war, they walked in their uniforms with their tanks, and they just turned themselves into walking targets. The Taliban, or whatever they were calling themselves, whichever period it was, just sat there behind a rock waiting and then just shot people. And it's happened constantly, the wrong way of doing it. The only way to get at the sort of people who are imprisoning women like this is to not observe the rules. You get bands of guerrillas, female and male, dressed in burqas. So they'd have to be quite small men. But you can hide a lot of armaments under those burqas. And just go round Afghanistan randomly assassinating any Taliban they come across. That's what the Taliban did to the American and the British and the Russian soldiers, isn't it? It's just their own medicine. Now, what would happen after a while? You get enough of those assassinations, and I can guarantee you that suddenly, as if by magic, some Muslim scholar is going to come up with the earth-shattering idea that actually face coverings aren't really necessary in Islam. which, by the way, they aren't. There are some ideas about modesty, covering your chest or your neck or whatever, nothing about the face. So that is what will happen when you. So the only way of doing it is to break the rules. And that's what all the Western powers are not prepared to do. Anyway, yeah, that's my take on my previous video and some of the really pertinent comments I got underneath that video. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.